All right, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to take a quick look at Nutanix Xi Leap and how it functions, and maybe give you a better idea as to how it could be, a solution for your environment for disaster recovery to support business continuity. So we're going to start with a quick whiteboard, go over some ins and outs, and then we're going to go through a quick demo, and that should just give you a pretty solid understanding of what Xi Leap is and what it's about. And hopefully it's beneficial to you. So let's just go into some of the high-level architecture of Xi Leap and just, again, kind of put some pieces together before we hop into the demo. I just want to make sure we have some of the concepts down. So we are a Nutanix customer running just say a 3-node cluster. Nothing fancy again here. And our management layer is going to be a Prism Central. And this Prism Central will handle the VMs, will handle our categories, will handle our protection, and our recovery policies. Other things, of course, but that's that. And also we're going to have our availability zones. So we'll call this an AZ. And these things are all, again, part of the Prism Central. Let's just draw Nutanix over here, and then for Nutanix. Actually, it should be an X, but you get the idea. And that would be my local on-prem environment. And this is what you're probably doing today. You've got, one or more clusters. You've got your Prism Central managing those guys. And maybe you're using protection domains now inside your Prism element where you're doing the all the snapshotting and everything kind of similar to how we did it back in the SAN days. Well, Leap in general comes in the Xi Leap or the Leap on-premise flavors. And the differences are basically the location that your recovery is going to be at. Xi Leap being in the cloud. This is our cloud. It's our service. So we'll just draw a cluster here. Again, it's nodes based off of what your environment is. And this is going to be peer. And this is N, but we'll say Xi. Or you can do the local, which would just be another physical appliance in another data center that you own or a colo or something. And the Xi Leap service allows us to handle all the maintenance and updates and management for you. It's provided to you as a service using the Xi portal. And the Xi portal is, guess what? An iteration of Prism Central. So you're basically talking Prism Central to Prism Central like you would. It's just, again, we kind of spin it a different way for the service and for simplicity. So any of the things you have here will replicate over here. So the networking requirement we have, let me go change colors right quick, is pretty simple. We're going to draw a box. We're going to draw this. This can be VPN, or it can be PBR. Yeah, it doesn't really fit, but oh well, I don't want to redo it. So we can either do VPN or policy-based routing, just for clarity. And this allows us to handle site to site, site to many site. And the VPN is, going to be provided by your firewall. So your Palo, Juniper, Cisco, Fortinet, what have you. Pretty much any VPN appliance that does, your IPsec 2 tunnels, you're good. So that's how we can establish the connectivity. If you want to do it differently, maybe you've got a different pipe that you need to funnel that traffic over, or you don't have your firewall in place, or you're between projects, or what have you. We do have a dedicated VPN appliance. It's a virtual machine that would run in Nutanix over here and establish that tunnel. So again, that's an optional thing, but it does exist. if that's how you need to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our snapshots of our VMs. Let's change our color to blue for clarity. We're going to take our VM. We're going to create our snapshot right here. We're going to assign a cat to it. That cat will be assigned to a protection policy and a recovery policy. These snaps get replicated to Xi. They will exist over in the cloud. And once they're there, you're ready to do your tests, do your failover, those sorts of things. You can get more information on like the SLAs and stuff, but we do have a RTO of 1 hour. We actually spin up VMs really, 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 really fast. So again, if I had another physical cluster here with a PC, then this can still happen with my whatever networking I have, private network to this cluster using the same mechanism. So I can use the same policy-driven system. It's just that when you go to Xi Leap, it is our service. So there's nothing more for you to manage except the replication of the VMs to and fro, right? So I just want to make sure we covered again some of these basic concepts of where things live and what the difference is. I mean, ultimately, any cloud solution is somebody else's data center, right? But we have this built in such a way that we're using all of our native tool set to protect a Nutanix cluster. And there's different ways to size it. So we can size it for full cluster replication. So if we want to protect the entire thing, we have one licensing model. Or if we want to protect specific VMs only and pick and choose what policy type they have, whether it's 1 hour, 4 hour, 24 hour, we can do that as well. So that's a high-level overview of the Nutanix Xi Leap platform. We have seen an intro about Xi Leap as a product that Nutanix has for our customers for disaster recovery and business continuity. We had a little bit of a whiteboard there to talk about how it works kind of at a high level, the differences between on-prem and Xi Leap as the service, which to be honest is basically the location in which it lives and how you consume it. And some of the componentry being the categories, protection policies, recovery plans, and availability zones. Those are the main components that we use to build our policy system to protect VMs. So once you kind of have that understanding, cool, great. We are looking good. You've bought Xi Leap. You're a happy customer. We want to make you happy. And you've logged into the customer portal at my.nutanix.com, and you see various things here. You can start your trial. You can launch the customer support portal, which is down here. But this is where you can get to the Xi Leap portal. You can click launch here. Xi Leap portal comes up. So remember, we have one on-premise component, which would be your cluster of choice running Prism Central, and then the Xi Leap service, which is going to be accessed either this way or directly from a URL. So let me go back to my dashboard. You can see here, this is the Xi Leap interface. It's very Prism Central. Surprise, it looks just like Prism Central because its DNA is that. So forgive some of the alerts. It's a demo environment that was just recently spun up for this specific purpose. So everything is kind of demo. But it gives me an environment to show you exactly kind of how the system works and what we're looking at. So you can see over here on the left, I have some information that is regarding my burn rate and my monthly charges in Xi Leap. So your mileage will vary depending on how your environment is sized, but this is where you'd see that data. Below that, we can see our status of our recovery plans over a period of time that we can change. The idea here is to see what's passed, what's failed, what's been tested, what hasn't been tested, and get an idea of what your overall data protection looks like. You can click the View All Recovery Plans link and go straight to those plans, and then look at them in more detail. We have our critical alerts and protection status in the next column, and again, how many VMs, what policies. The more data that we have over time and replication, the more you'll see. Recently created VM. I can manually create live VMs here. I don't have anything in this environment. It's just replication. And then finally, recent task, what's changed? You know, it's a task logger. So if I go over here and look at Explore, you can see I have, a very Prism Central look interface, like I said. So let's take a look. I'd have VMs and live VMs here, which I don't currently have. Actually, I do have a couple images, cool, that I can deploy. I can also add them, clicking the add button, and upload what is my image of choice, so your operating systems. So virtual private clouds, if you're familiar with AWS or Azure, these are your environments and network environments that everything would live in. So I've got one for tests and one for production. You can create additional ones as well. This is for our purposes for this demo. Floating IP addresses, so you do get 4 public IP addresses. More can be purchased. And this is where you would associate them, aka NAT, to your VM. VPN Gateways, so these are the gateways that are establishing my site-to-site VPN, your environment to Xi Leap. So we do support BGP policy-based routing. We also support many, IPsec VPN tunnels. So basically all the big players, your Palos and Junipers and Ciscos and Fortinet and so on. They're all pretty much supported. If you don't have a VPN appliance that's going to play nicely, or you don't want to use that, maybe it's on separate bandwidth and you want to go a different direction, we do have a virtual machine that can run within your cluster to establish the tunnel. So again, we have multiple ways to grant that connectivity. Here you can see I have one VPN connection already. I have my on-premise gateway here talking to my Xi Leap gateway, which is in our hosted service. And it is established and connected, and I have a weighted metric for the dynamic route policy. Again, BGP or policy-based routing is your friend. The categories, as we discussed, you can see I have various categories these are pretty much default created, but we're going to use these to show protections. You can also see what policies or items are assigned to a specific policy. So this assigned policy has this policy and this recovery plan assigned to it already. App 1, 2, 3. And as I assign things to those, you'll start to see assigned entities show up as well. Availability zones, these are your sites. Pretty straightforward. When you configure it in Prism Central, when you configure Leap, it's either going to be a physical cluster or a Xi Leap environment. And you can see here, local, this is my Xi Leap environment, and physical just denotes that it is another physical cluster in a remote site, and I can talk to it. I have one protection policy currently that is running. And I have one recovery plan currently that is running. And I have 3 recovery points. These are the actual recovery points, snapshots of the VMs up in Xi Leap. So here in Xi Leap, I can see this being my peer and everything that it's received. So you can see I've got an alert here from, again, this is when the environment was getting created. So we could just kind of, ignore that guy. But that's the Xi Leap portal. So again, you want to make sure you understand this is the portal. This is what it looks like. Before we hop into Prism Central, which is where you're going to do the majority of your things. Remember, when you trigger a failover, you're going to do it from the remote site, not the local site. When you want to fail home, you would then use your local site. Right, after we looked at the Xi Leap portal itself, you can see in this environment, it is Prism Central. If you're used to it, nothing should surprise you here. The things that we want to focus on, again, are going to be our categories, our availability zones, protection policies themselves, and the recovery plans. So if I go to the VM list real quick, you'll see that I have a handful of VMs. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can see that they have, they're the running state and all those wonderful things. If I want to see my categories, I can go back to the hamburger menu and click on categories. And I will now see that this demo environment, or this demo category, is assigned to 3 VMs and assigned to this protection policy and this recovery policy. So again, if I just drill into that real quick, you'll see the mapping. Here's these 2 policies, protection, recovery, what servers they are in there, what values we have. So it's like app tiers, or for example, and then they belong to these VMs, or they're members, I should say. So the protection policy itself, you can see I have one called app PR, and it can be whatever you want. And if I go click on the update to show you how it was configured, I've got app PR, what location it starts the primary cluster. So we're looking at all the local clusters here, where my recovery location is going to be. That's Xi Leap. asynchronous replication. I want to roll up my snapshots. We're doing monthlies and weeklies here. And then what category is assigned to it. So you can see I've got the main category of demo and the subcategory of app 1, 2, and 3 assigned to that. So as soon as I add a VM to this policy, it's going to start meeting whatever my protection policy type is my policy type for protection is. It's going to meet that right away and start that snapshot replication for getting it protected. It's not going to wait unless I did something with scheduling. So alerts here, if I had any alerts, failures, connectivity issues, what have you, it'll show up here under alerts. So you see this protection policy is looking pretty decent. I can also clone a policy if I want to use it as a base and then tweak it further for separate environments. Now the recovery plan is a little bit different. Again, this is how I'm going to recover something and in what order at the peer site. So here I have my app PR recovery plan, and I have nothing really going on here. If I click on task, I can see if I've done a validation, a test, which is something unique to us. Again, we can test in a separate VPC unrelated to your production VPC and do a full end-to-end test of that environment with networking to make sure that it's going to fail over as you expect. And then, of course, you can take the information out of that and file that away for whatever compliance reporting that you might have. And a failover would be the actual event itself. This is where you would see the details of a failover. Alerts are alerts, right? Who cares? Another thing is the cleanup test VMs. This button here will clean up the VMs once you're done with that test environment, so you don't have to go manually do any kind of cleanup within Prism Central or Prism Element. So our action buttons at the top, validate test, cleanup test, update failover, etc. Delete's hidden because let's not actually delete stuff. If we go click on update on this plan, you can see we gave it a name. We have our categories here, one category, and our subcategories, app 1, 2, and 3, and the VMs are assigned to them. So what's neat about this is I can add more stages, and when I add an entity to the stage, it can be a VM or it can be a category. So depending on how I want to tier things out, I have the flexibility to build that. And within that flexibility, I can also add a delay. So let's say I want to bring up my domain controllers first, give them time to bake, and then I want to bring up the SQL database next, give it a couple seconds, and then bring up the app servers, and then everybody else can follow. And that way I can ensure that within my kind of boot craziness, everybody gets time to finish booting up their services so I don't have any dependencies of looking for something and possibly failing or timing out before the previous dependency environment is ready. So, again, a neat thing that we have built in. All right, so we go next. Even those SEs are prone to going, what did I just click? So you can see this is where we're actually mapping the networks. And this is important because, again, we have a test and a prod network in each location. So that would be my primary site and my recovery site. So my production would be whatever VLAN or environment that group of virtual machines is running on. Test should be a different IP network, different subnet, and it should be unrelated. We're mapping this production to this production, this test to this test over at the other side. That way, if I'm doing a test on either end, I know I'm not actually running over into my production space, and I'm also not running over IP space, unless I need to for whatever reason. Again, your mileage may vary. So this does not support layer 2 extension. It is all routed. However, I can set customized mapping. So by default, we are going to take change the first 3 octets of the IP address, say the last octet, so you know what to map to. So 10.40.0.1 might map to 10.50.0.1 on the other side. So again, we've done little things different here in our demo environment just because we can. But your environment in production would be different. You're not going to do what we're doing necessarily. So the custom IP mapping lets me override things. So let's say I've got a kind of a truncated IP space or something that's given to me from maybe my colo provider, and it's not really going to match my IP subnet over in production if I want to move it over, or that size space won't match either. So I might not have as much control over to what's assigned where. With the custom IP mapping, I can manually override IP addresses. So if I need this specific 10.40.0.1 to map to 192.168, something unrelated, I can map it here. And then we're going to re-IP those systems when they come up on the other side. So I just wanted to focus on, again, what we have built into the networking here. And floating IPs assigned on Xi Leap. This is our public IPs that we have assigned to your VPC connectivity, so you have public access to those machines, and we map them accordingly. So again, those are the building blocks, that we have. So it's pretty straightforward once you configure it. Just for example, here we can go create a protection policy out of for scratch. We already have our availability zones built, but just to show you the steps right quick, I'm going to click the availability zone. I select what type of location it is. So for Xi Leap, for example, I would go to Xi Leap Cloud Services. Since I've already done that, I can't walk through it, but basically this is where you're going to be prompted to put in your username, password, and your credentials that are given to you from the Xi Leap team to onboard you. And now you're connected to Xi Leap, and then they whiteboard and go through the white glove and give you the VPN, help you with the VPN setup. So that's where you configure that availability zone. Pretty straightforward, right? I mean, I'm not really reinventing any wheels and doing some crazy plumbing. It's just username, password kind of thing. It's very simple. Once that's established, we would then go and say, okay, I need to create a recovery plan. What am I going to protect? So let's go create a new one. We're going to say recovery location is my Xi Leap location. We're going to proceed. Let's just say Xi test, because this is test, we're all friends here. Don't need to be fancy. Add entities. We have these app VM things, but these are already in use, right? So we might not want to do that. We can actually use the VM name, or we can use a category. So let's just go ahead and create a new category to assign to this policy. See what I did there? So we've got our demo. Let's just go into demo. And you know what? I don't want to do it that way. I actually want to create just a completely new one, just to keep things clean and separated. There we go. Click the little plus sign to add it, save. Now we have a new category. Now let's go back to our VMs. And let's take VM 4 and 5. So neat things with Prism Central is I can do group activities here, like mapping things. So I don't have to touch each VM. Click my thing, click test. I'm going to click save down here. And now it's going to be assigned to that policy. You can see that we have updated it. So now let's go do our recovery plan now that we have, protection policy, now that we have that built. Create protection policy. Like test, clusters, location. We're going to do asynchronous every hour. I want to roll up every 1 day, local retention, we'll say 1 week. This is where you meet your business RPO requirements. How long between failures can your business sustain, and how long do you want to retain that? That's where this comes into play. Let's go ahead and add our category, Xi test. Click save. We're going to click save here. And now it's ready to go. Within moments, we're going to start replicating to the peer side. Another neat trick is if you go under virtual infrastructure, you can see the VM recovery points. This used to be called recoverable entities, but this is now recovery points. So I would start to see the next ones as they're created in this list. So let's go take a look at our Xi Leap side. And you will see if we go to explore that within a short while, we should see our additional categories and we should see our additional policies map over, because we're talking Prism Central to Prism Central. They will see each other. So let's let that bake for a minute. While that's doing that, we should go create our recovery plan itself. So we'll create a new recovery plan. We're going to recover to our Xi Leap. We're going to click proceed. Xi test, click next, power on sequence. We have one category, but if I wanted to bring these things up, I could. We're going to use our category here. And again, you can nest things as well. It just depends on what you want to do administratively. But I prefer to keep things delineated. So we're just going to say we're going to go prod to test, prod to test. We're not going to assign any floating IPs here. I just want to show you the fundamentals here. If I needed to, I could click how it works, and it shows me that mapping that I described earlier. So again, we kept that in the UI, And if I need to add additional networks, I can add additional networks by clicking this button here. And look, now I have additional networks I can map. So again, your requirements can be met. And again, that still has the custom IP mapping. Let's click done here and show you that now I'm done. I have a plan and I have a recovery plan in place. We go to our protection policies here and click on Xi test. Well, nothing's really exciting going on there yet. Let's go back to our Xi Leap. And maybe I need to refresh my UI here. Let's see if that'll do it. No, it still hasn't done what I want, recovery points. So it must still be baking. Let's go take a look and see if I can see any. Oh, recovery points yet. Nope, not yet. All right, so we'll just let that run, but I do have some existing VMs that are already, in a recovery point and already replicated. So just for the sake of time and simplicity, let's go ahead and play with those guys. So let's pretend that this site is now dead. I'm going to go to my Xi Leap portal over here. I'm going to go to my recovery plan, and we're going to click that recovery plan. And we are going to, let's just run a test. So we're going to click test. I want to test this recovery plan. I want to fail it over to my Xi Leap location. It's going to bring up these 3 VMs. Let's go. It should happen relatively quick. And I can show you what we're doing in the VM list here in a second. All right, there we go. So here I've got the validation steps. You can see my task is kind of shown up here. And if I click on task, I can drill down to subtask, etc. So let's go to our test. And you'll see what we're doing. We're bringing things online. It's restoring from the snapshot that's running currently. It's already done a validation, which you can manually trigger a validation if you want to validate the configuration, but a test will also do a validation. Excuse me, I had to have some additional coffee. So, come on now, let that thing finish running. Once that thing has completed, we will see a completion over here and a results. Okay, you see it's updated the counter. And if we go to our VMs list, we should see Nutanix-test-app. So again, these are bringing these machines up and going to give us their power state and all those sorts of things. So once we go back to our recovery plan, drill back in and see its state and it finishes, you'll see those machines. And then I can click the cleanup test and it'll clean up those VMs. So we'll let this bake for another couple seconds here. While it's doing that, let's just go see if my other location has done its thing yet. So let's go look at our protection policies. Okay, let's look at our recovery points. Let's go ahead and star that so it shows up in our list here. I like that better. There they are. Boom. Here's one recovery point, 2 for those newly created, not newly created VMs, but newly created category that's assigned to them on that new policy. You can see I've got 2 recovery points already locally. Let's go back to our, just keep it on our dashboard. Let's go to our Xi Leap. See our status of our recovery plan here. Let me get my zoom fixed. Mac Magic Mouse has a mind of its own sometimes. So we're at 59%. Let's that finish baking. And while it's doing that, we'll go take a look over here. Do I have any more recovery plans? It hasn't replicated that yet. Recovery points are still 3. Categories. Hasn't replicated my data yet. Let's go take a look at our VMs, our VM state. So those guys are still powered off. If we go back to our plan here, let's just watch our task. Okay, our plan has done a successful test failover. And you can see I have the information that tells me what steps happened and in what order they happened, and everybody's happy. So let's go ahead and clean up those test VMs. I want to clean them up from this recovery plan name. Click clean up. It'll initiate it, and I will start to see that those VMs will start to power off and disappear from my VM list. Oh, poof, there they go. That quick. So let's go take a look at an actual failover. So my site is down. I need to initiate the recovery plan for an actual failover. We're going to go ahead and click on failover here. Is this a planned or unplanned? And so the difference is how we handle the power. So this one will require downtime because I'm going to power off a VM, send a remaining snapshot over, and then bring it online. Whereas an unplanned failover is that site's down. I can't talk to it. We need to kill things. We don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. VMs associated with this recovery plan should be powered off at the primary location, has active PE or PEs to avoid conflicts with post failover, etc. So let's just go power off those VMs and do a air quote unplanned, because I don't really want to wait for it to figure out the planned. So we'll go to our VMs here. We're going to select 1, 2, 3, unselect 4 and 5, and we're just going to go hard power off. Just your demo servers, you can go away. Red-headed stepchildren, right? So we've successfully triggered a power off operation. These guys are going to go down in just a second. Re-click the list for a refresh. Boom, they're off. Let's go back to Xi Leap. So now I know I'm clear. Granted, I could do it anyways, but I want to be good because I don't want to do a plan. It's going to do some additional steps. So unplanned failover, yes. From the recovery from latest snapshot, or if I need to specify a point in time, maybe there was an event I had happen and I need to go back to that point in time. Possibly you're dodging a ransomware activity or some other bad activity. You might want to select a point in time. Again, just select the calendar and then the time, and you will be able to use that recovery point. I'm just going to say the latest one. I'm recovering from my local environment to my Xi Leap environment and failover. Now, while this failover is running, you will see that I have the same steps that we did in test, except this time it'll be in the production VPC and brought online, and I will now have all that activity tracked here. And then I'll be left with VMs that users can access. So once you have your firewall and your public access figured out, because again your mileage will vary, but we do provide you again the mechanism with the public IPs, you will now have your environment up and running. So failover is that simple. You're not reinventing the wheel. There's not a lot to manage or maintain. It's all contained in our environment. You get this UI that you're kind of familiar with as a Nutanix customer. If you're new, we would love to show you more. We have great education services. But further ado, here's our unplanned failover. Click on the failover button. And I've already started these events. The machines have already been triggered for a restore. Let's go see if my virtual infrastructure is up yet. So the VMs aren't here yet. It'll be doing that promptly. Let's go take a look over here again at got click happy, my recovery plan. Unplanned, so we're still there, failover. Okay, it's powering some of them on over here, so it should be ready to show me some VMs. Boom, there are my 3 VMs. This one's already powered on. If I haven't mentioned already, we have a hour RTO to bring machines up, but it happens much quicker than that. And we can bring up many VMs at once due to the nature of our architecture and how the environment is built with our clusters in our data center. So we are running Nutanix on Nutanix with Nutanix, eating our own dog food when we provide this service, which is a very good thing. Okay, that guy is still figuring out their boot delays. Oh, see, that one's on too. And let's just go look back at my recovery plan. And we should be wrapping up. Okay, we're waiting on this last VM to wrap up. Come on, app 2, VM, stage 2. Once this guy finishes and we see that our failover has happened successfully, we can trigger a recovery back home to the local site. And it's really basically the same process. I'm going to go to my local site. I'm going to go into that recovery plan and tell it to bring things home. So, okay, my recovery plans have replicated. My other protection policies that we created earlier have replicated. So that is a good thing. Let's go back to dashboard because I like to jump there. See, I can see 3 of 3 VMs are protected, so my statuses have changed. All right, so our recovery plan has succeeded. You can see we have a successful set of steps. Let's go take a gander at our virtual machines. Here they are. They're powered on. And over in my Prism Central side, you can see that my VMs have been cleaned up 1, 2, 3. So we made sure that we don't have any conflicts. My other ones, 4 and 5, separate recovery plan, untouched. So now let's go back to Prism Central side. Let's go to recovery plans. Oops, sorry. Recovery. Yeah, recovery. That's what we're doing. We're recovering. We're bringing it home. So let's go do a failover. Let's do a planned failover because we're going to plan with the business when we want to come home, right? So we've scheduled that we're ready, to come home. Replication has been happening because, again, as soon as those machines come online in Xi Leap, we're sending the snapshots or trying to. Once we detect that the peer is back up, we're going to send those snapshots right away so we can recover. So the site's up. Yay, everybody's happy. We've scheduled the business. We're ready to fail over. We can also do an unplanned where we do kind of the manual cleanup and assume the site's down. But that's really for if your site is down and you're going to Xi Leap or your recovery center, whereas we're going home. So we're going to do a plan. Steps are basically the same thing, right? One radio button different. Not too shabby. So it's going to initiate the recovery plan. We are going to see all the steps run over here in tasks under failover. So we've already validated. It's going to start to migrate the snapshots over, do what it has to do to get them mounted, and then it'll start to bring the VMs online and boot them up. So let's let that get a little more progress, and then we can see what happens there. Here they go. We're already powering on the first one. Let's just go to our VM list and see 1, 2, and 3. Here they are. 1's already online. So here in this demo, we have seen what Xi Leap is, how it's different than than on-premise. Just basically looking at the UI. We have created plans and categories and recovery plans, protection policies, in our categories. And we did some replication. We failed over. We failed back. We did a test. So we've kind of done a couple different things, showing you, really what Xi Leap is about and how easy it is to configure these components. The high-level components, there's not many of them, and what you do with them is very simple. And really, your failover is fairly point and click. Recovery plan, this recovery plan, failover, let it roll, right? So here you can see that our second VM's already come online. Number 3. Had a bit more of a delay last time, but here we go. So that is Xi Leap. I thank you for your time hanging out with me while I ramble quite a bit and tell you how Xi Leap is and how it functions. It's a strong addition to the Nutanix portfolio, allowing our customers a method to protect their cluster, protect their clusters, and limit the amount of overhead you need to deal with. I don't have to deal with maintaining my own physical environment and networking fabric and, all the additional things you have to take care of, power and all that in on-premise or in a colo. Colos can be quite pricey as well. So we're priced pretty competitively. And, there's a strong TCO that your sales team would love to talk to you about. If you have any further questions, reach out to your sales team. Us SEs love to showcase and talk and talk about Nutanix. It's kind of why we're here. But we can also engage our product experts who can really dive in deeper about, if you really want to get into all the nuts and bolts or specific use cases or things that you think might be unique about your environment. We can talk about that with those teams. So again, thank you for checking out Xi Leap with